Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the webinar today. In our short demonstration, we're going to provide a look at SigmaQUOTE, our fully integrated, flexible, and speedy quoting solution that is perfect fit for SigmaNEST customers, especially customers that work in the fabrication shop or steel service center industries. Feel free to take notes and post any questions you have in the chat section. At the conclusion of our discussion, we'll address your questions. My name is Ari Brown. I am the North American Head of Sales. Our special guest speaker today is Wayne Cathers. He's the product owner for our business system products. He started with SigmaNEST as an application engineer and now manages the development of our products from quoting to scheduling to MRP and the shop floor production feedback. SigmaNEST has developed tools that allow our customers to quickly provide accurate quotes and estimates to their customers. First to market is incredibly important to our customer success. Utilizing the SigmaNEST system, we provide the tools that turn customers' purchase orders to data that the operations teams can use to efficiently process the jobs. Our customers have led Sigmatek to develop tools that connect all areas of the shop, from quoting to work orders to nesting NC to the machines on the shop floor. The flow of information has never been so easy and instantaneous as it is today. Having said that, I will turn the webinar over to Wayne Cathers.
All right, thanks Ari for the introduction, and thanks everybody for joining our webinar today. So as Ari said, we're going to take a look at some of the different features and the workflows available in SigmaQUOTE. Again, a quoting solution that's going to be perfect for all of our great SigmaNEST customers. What we're going to do first is we're going to walk through the process at normal speed so you guys can have an idea of how quickly and easily we can create the quotes. And then after that quick walkthrough takes about 90 seconds. Then we'll step through kind of step by step, phase by phase of that quoting process to give you guys an idea of some of the various features and functionalities that are available.
With SigmaQUOTE, you'll be able to create quotes in minutes, not hours. We'll start by importing a wide selection of 2D and 3D CAD files. From there, our integrated system allows us to quickly take data from the production system and use that data to calculate the cost and price for the quote. So you'll always have confidence your quote is accurate. The same nesting and toolpath strategies used in production are also used during the quoting process in a highly automated way. Now that the parts are ready, we can create a new job. We can select from our list of customers in our integrated CRM system. We can change things like due date of the job, and then let our powerful costing features take over and do the work to accurately calculate cost, markup, and price, which are highly customizable, so you can ensure that costs are calculated the way you need for your business. We can then quickly create quotation documentation that can be printed, saved, or emailed directly to our customers. When we win the quote, you'll then enjoy a seamless transition to your SigmaNEST production software as we change the status of the job from a quote to an order. We do extra things like saving the parts, and now we'll generate the SigmaNEST work order. And we'll look and see that the work order is now automatically created in SigmaNEST, ready for production.
So let's talk a little bit about the accuracy that we have when it comes to producing those quotes. When it comes to accuracy, some of the things we like to talk about are the labor cost, so the actual cost to drive the machine, and the material cost. So we can produce quotes very quickly with SigmaNEST and with SigmaQUOTE. But if the quote isn't accurate, then does it really matter how fast the quote goes out the door? The only way to ensure the accuracy of your quotes, in our opinion, is to quote with the same software that you're using to drive the machines for production. Third-party quoting software has to either be constantly updated. Anytime you do updates to your nesting software or your production cutting software, SigmaNEST, you have to update the quoting software with that same information. Leads, feed rates, pierce times, all that information has to either be duplicated inside the quoting software, or the third-party quoting software, worse, has to just guess at how you're going to nest the parts and how the machine is going to be driven. So let's take a look at the first part of that process again, and I'll show you some of those details that are kind of glossed over as you go through quickly. So the first thing we do is grab some parts. So again, we have various different 3D, 2D files that you can import, even PDFs. I'll quickly just grab some of those parts, and then the parts get automatically created. If information like material and thickness are inside the DXFs, we can obviously pick that information up. And then I can quickly nest all the parts. Now it's important to note that SigmaQUOTE uses the default settings that you have set up in SigmaNEST for production. So we're nesting the parts exactly the same way for quoting that you would be able to produce them for production. And we apply the exact same NC that you'd be able to do for production. So let's dive into a couple of those different areas of nesting, material usage, and NC. So the first thing is feed rates and pierce times. So SigmaNEST will produce estimated cutting times for all of your programs. Once you do a little bit of work to dial in those times, taking some measurements out of the machine or grabbing the information from your machine controller to know how fast the machine is going to cut certain materials and thicknesses, how long the pierces take, all that information gets input into SigmaNEST so that you can accurately understand how long those nests are going to take, and you can use that information for production purposes. But you can also use that exact same information in the quoting stage, because again, SigmaQUOTE is directly integrated with SigmaNEST, which is the software you'll use to drive the machines for production. It takes into account all of these different things like feed rates, pierce times for all of your different machines. Now, some machines have even more complex NC and feed rates. So for example, if you have a water jet machine, which is what I have pictured here, some of the code for a water jet machine, if it has to do ramping to ramp up to speed, ramp down so that it can turn a corner, all that information is known by SigmaNEST, so it automatically gets used when you're quoting as well. Same thing can be said for, on the other end, some of your higher speed machines, like a high-speed laser. If you've got your post set up in SigmaNEST to do exact stops, where the machine comes to a corner, stops for a second or half a second before it turns a corner to ensure you get that high-quality edge, all of that information is built. You can configure that inside SigmaNEST, and because SigmaNEST knows about it, SigmaQUOTE knows about it when you're producing the quote. Next, a little bit more on labor cost calculations. Many third-party quoting solutions just look at the geometry of the part when they're trying to calculate how long it's going to take to cut, what the cutting cost is, so that it can then determine a price. But a lot of times they don't take into account all the extra things that might happen, all the extra NC that you might apply to the parts that isn't related to the exact geometry of the parts. For example, if you have a laser machine and you're doing a lot of laser automation with unloading and loading time, you're probably adding a bunch of tabs to your parts. If you're doing a bunch of those tabs can cause extra cutting time, depending on how you're doing the tabs. They can cause extra cutting time, extra head motions, maybe even extra pierces. A third-party solution isn't going to understand exactly how you're tabbing the parts, so it can't account for that, but SigmaNEST does. Now, when it comes to material cost, estimating material usage is is very, very important. With the price of material these days, depending on what material you're cutting, the cost of the material could be significantly more expensive than the cost to actually drive the machine. Third-party quoting solutions won't know how your parts are going to be nested in SigmaNEST. Now, you can probably set up some information in those softwares, such as part spacing, how much space between your parts, edge distance, and things like that. But what about all the other stuff? So what if you have, what if you're cutting thicker material and you have longer lead-ins? Most of your third-party softwares aren't going to account for that. SigmaNEST already has it built in. If you have a bevel machine and you want to account for all the extra material that's going to be consumed by doing those bevels, and you want to account for the extra spacing that you'll need to do things like corner loops, for example, all that has to be taken into account when you're deciding how those parts could possibly get nested on a sheet, so that you can take into account all the scrap that's actually going to be produced by cutting these parts. Again, because SigmaNEST has all this information, SigmaQUOTE does as well. The last point I'll make on material and labor accuracy is about scrap and remnant. So SigmaQUOTE can help further automate the process by knowing which material to count as scrap and which to not count as scrap. Because we use the default settings and everything that's already pre-configured in SigmaNEST, the same settings that you'll use for production, if you have automated crop lines and automatic remnant creation activated in SigmaNEST, then you'll have those settings set that says if the remnant is this big and if it doesn't have this many holes, and all of those details that determine when an extra piece of metal can be saved as a remnant versus used as scrap, all that can be accounted for in SigmaQUOTE as well. So if you're trying to produce more competitive quotes and you don't want to charge the customer for the entire sheet, if you're only going to use part of it, the quoting system can automatically calculate and take into account how you're going to run those sheets in production. Now, most of the time, cutting is typically only the first operation that goes into your parts. A lot of you guys have shops where you're doing extra operations, everything from bending, welding, painting, maybe other, fabricating options. So let's quickly look and see how the software handles that. We have the parts nested from the last video. We've clicked the new job button. We're selecting the customer for the job. If we know the due date, we're just going to set the due date real quick and click OK. Now the calculations start. We're going to grab the information from SigmaNEST. We give a little loading bar here as it's calculating the parts. And all of the secondary operations have already automatically been added to the parts and calculated. No extra steps necessary. So we can do different setups in the software where we can look at information about the SigmaNEST part, the information that's inside the SigmaNEST part, and we can use that to determine which operations to add and different variables about those operations and how to calculate them. So we're able to create any kind of custom calculation that's mostly any custom calculation that you guys are looking for. So for example, it's very common for our customers that do have a bending operation. They want to add in information to the calculation of how long the bend is going to take, how much they should charge for the bend. They want to add in information like how many bends does the part have? I want to charge so many, it takes so many seconds to do each bend. How many flips and turns is it going to take to do the bending operation? They want to account for that. You might also want to account for whether or not you have to bring in another operator. If it's a really long part or if it's a really heavy part, you might want to add in extra time because the operator is going to have to go grab someone else to help him do the bend. All of that can be automatically accounted for because, again, we're directly integrated with SigmaNEST. The SigmaQUOTE knows how big the part is, how much it weighs, all the information about the part, so we can use those for very, very specific calculations. However, you guys need your calculations written. So, because we can automate so many of those steps, so many of that calculation, from nesting to cutting, secondary operations, we're able to send very, very accurate quotes, very trustworthy quotes, and we're able to do it very quickly. So now that the job is created, everything was calculated automatically for me. I just changed the job status to a quote. I get presented with documentation that I can customize and then send out to my customers. So part of that process of being able to send and create those quotes very quickly is a few things. One, it's important to note that we're able to import all different, a wide variety of files, whether it's 2D files like DXFs or DWGs, or 3D files like Inventor or SolidWorks, all those different, even step files, all of those different files types we can bring in and import them automatically. We can then quickly click a button to have the parts nested and all the default toolpath applied. Now, what's really important here is that, and you'll see this in the video that we've shown so far, is it takes very little training. So if you guys might have estimators or you might have quoters that maybe aren't super comfortable with CAD, or they're not super familiar with CAM software, and you don't want to train them or have them have to learn how to use SigmaNEST or how to do all these nesting things and change lead-ins and all of this, the great part is because you'll have all that information already set in your defaults to run SigmaNEST for production, your estimators and your quoters, they don't have to know any of it. SigmaQUOTE just uses all that default information automatically, so the estimators don't have to worry about it. And again, we might have said this before, but if not, you won't have any need for spreadsheets. I know a lot of customers now, before they implement a quoting software, they're using spreadsheets for a lot of things to calculate the material needed, how much time it's going to take. All of those spreadsheet calculations can be built into the software, so the software can handle the calculations for you instead of your quoters or your estimators having to do it each time. It takes a lot of time, could lead to error, and it means you have to have specially trained people to do it. Now, the last step that we'll talk about today in the process actually happens after you win the quote. So SigmaQUOTE is going to allow you to quote very quickly and very accurately. And we all know, as already mentioned earlier, that if we can get quotes out the door fast, we know that typically means more orders are going to come in. So once you win the order, you need to actually produce the parts, which means you have to take all the data that you've entered into the quote about the parts, their geometry, material thickness, and now you have to get them into SigmaNEST. With SigmaQUOTE, the parts are already there. All I have to do is change the job status from quote to an order. I'll get the opportunity to print some order confirmation or other documentation. The parts get saved. And then I'll create the SigmaNEST work order. Work order's there. So now I'll close out SigmaQUOTE, and then we can go check those work orders, and we can see that that work order is already created. And there's all the parts that were inside the quote. Now, can you do this with a third-party software? Sure, but it's going to add at least one, if not 2 or 3 extra steps. Let's take the file import, for example. If you're using a third-party quoting solution, you're going to have to import those files into your quoting software so that you can quote them. And then if you win the order, you're going to have to import those files again. That's an extra unnecessary step. You're going to have to import them again into SigmaNEST. Now, you might have an in-between integration software. We offer a software called SimTrans that helps automate that process. But there's still that extra step of transforming and transitioning the data from one software to another. The next piece of info is things like the order data. So the customer, the quantity, material, and thickness of all of your parts, all that has to be re-entered into SigmaNEST, either manually or through some type of integration, if you're using a third-party quoting solution. SigmaQUOTE, on the other hand, is a fully integrated quoting solution because it's fully integrated with SigmaNEST. Once you import the files for quoting, they already exist in SigmaNEST. Once you set the quantities, the material thickness, the customer, even the specific machine that you want the part that you're quoting the parts on, all that information is already inside SigmaNEST. So there's no need to redo work. There's no need to transfer data from one system to another. This allows you to reduce a lot of the time and the effort it takes to go from a quote to production. It can reduce the opportunity for human error to miss key things, type things in incorrectly, or even miss something altogether. and it can reduce the potential failure points by having less touch points after you've won the quote. So that brings us to the end of our walkthrough of SigmaQUOTE, some of the different various features and functionalities, and the way that we're able to produce quotes very quickly and very accurately. There's tons of other features. If we had 5 hours to do a webinar, I'd take 5 hours and show you all the different features. But all of our salesmen, our technical teams are ready and willing to talk with you and show you all the different features, ask your questions. So please reach out to us if you have any questions or want some more information. Before I let you go, before my part of the presentation is done though, I do want to give you a sneak peek of some new functionality that we're releasing later on this year in version 24. So right now we have our quoting solution fully integrated with SigmaNEST and SigmaCTL, our cut to length product. In version 24, again, releasing later this year, we're fully integrating SigmaQUOTE in with SigmaTube for SolidWorks, which is our application for tube cutting for those of y'all that have tube cutting machines. So here's a small sneak peek. In here, we've already got the assembly in SolidWorks. We create a new job. We run through feature recognition to understand the size, the shape, the dimensions, all the info about the parts in SigmaTube, just like we could do inside SigmaNEST. We'll create a new job, type in information like the customer, same as we did before. And then, just like we do for SigmaNEST, we're going to be able to grab all of that data from SigmaTube and bring that information in so that we can very quickly quote for the SigmaTube tubes and bars and beams for those operations. And now I'll hand it back over to Ari for some Q&A.
All right, thank you, Wayne. That was very, very informative. I appreciate that. And we have some great questions. I'm trying to answer them as fast as I can type. One of the first questions came in from Joel. And he says, can this integrate with non-Sigma MRP ERP software?
Yes, absolutely. So of course, we have our own Sigma MRP shop floor connected shop solution. You guys have probably seen some of the webinars. If not, I believe they're online. You should go check them out. If you do have another software that you're already using for an ERP software that you want to integrate with, we do this regularly. We have many customers that use our software for quoting because we can quote so accurately, much more accurately than most of the ERP softwares on the market. And then they'll take that data, the data that we produce when doing that quote, and we can quickly package that up and send that off so an ERP system can pick it up. So absolutely, we can do integrations.
Great, thank you. One of our super users out there, Bob Anderson, asked a really good question. Is SigmaQUOTE part of MRP or is it within SigmaNEST?
Yeah, so good question. The answer is both. So it is inside SigmaNEST. If you do not have Sigma MRP, which is our MRP ERP package for those of y'all that don't know, if you don't have Sigma MRP, totally fine. We run basically a lightweight version of the MRP just for that quoting functionality inside SigmaNEST itself. So you don't have to have MRP to run SigmaQUOTE. But if you do have our MRP package or you're looking at implementing a new ERP, it is a direct integration. So the exact same info that you would make in a quote inside SigmaNEST would be available immediately inside the MRP, our ERP package. So you wouldn't have to transfer that data, and we fully integrate.
And as a follow-up question there, Wayne, it is, if a customer just had, like, say, SigmaNEST Power Pack, and they wanted to integrate SigmaQUOTE within that, just SigmaNEST with no connection to their ERP, I understand that you can do like a bolt-on to your Power Pack seat, or we can sell or set up an estimator seat.
Yep, exactly. Just like you guys have, probably some of y'all have different add-ons that you've added to SigmaNEST, like a bevel cutting module or a punch module, something like that. There's an extra module you can add on directly to your programming seat of SigmaNEST that'll activate quoting functionality, and you're good to go. If you want to have a separate individual, a separate employee doing all the quoting, we also have a standalone quoting seat that they can use, and they won't have to tie up the production nesting seat.
Cool, cool. Gerby asks a good question. He says, can NC files from Tekla be imported? And if so, will it still be using the intelligence of quantities and thicknesses?
So for that one, we'd want to get in touch with our import product owner. So I don't know exactly all the details. I know we do many different integrations with Tekla, passing data back and forth, so it might be possible. But that one's kind of out of my sphere.
Okay, cool. Jeff Casper asked, how does it calculate laser cutting part cycle times when the max speed is only achieved on longer straightaways? We cut thin stainless parts with detail that slows the machine down, and on some parts, the machine never reaches the cut condition feed rate.
For sure. So it kind of depends on the specific machine that you're using. So some machines, SigmaNEST is actually driving the feed rates. Most of them, for most lasers, we don't drive the feed rates. What you need to do is work with your SigmaNEST operations team. They can build in those things like the ramping of the feed rates, the different cut speeds and variables. All of that can be built into SigmaNEST to kind of mirror what your machine is doing, so that we can get those accurate times.
Lots of more great questions, Wayne, coming in here. One from Temla asks, will there be a future integration with Fusion 360 in the future?
It's hard to know. Depends on exactly what specifically you're referring to. But if you're talking about being able to import files from Fusion 360, then again, that would be a question we'd want to pass off to our importing product owner. But might be something in the future.
Another great point here from Bob Anderson. Bob, I appreciate your question here, or your comment. Anybody can quote to order. Do you have a solution to accurately give a date that we can actually have the items done?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. Over the last couple of years, we've put a lot of time and a lot of effort into producing a very, very accurate scheduling solution specifically designed for the sheet metal industry. We all know that scheduling can be very difficult, especially once you start nesting, mixing parts from different jobs onto different sheets, knowing when those sheets are going to be cut. All of that information is something that most scheduling softwares just can't handle. They don't do that for the sheet metal nesting industry. We have a solution called SigmaSchedule that was specifically engineered and designed to tackle that specific problem. If you have SigmaSchedule implemented, and again, that can run alongside Sigma MRP or just SigmaQUOTE. So if you just have SigmaQUOTE and you want to add on scheduling, perfect, we can do that. You can actually get an estimate during the quote, even before you take the order. You can run the job through the scheduling engine to be able to give your customer an estimate to say, this is when I should be able to have it completed if you put the order in now. And it constantly keeps itself updated. So the answer is absolutely.
And then he has a follow-up here. It says, have the items and their multiple operations, overall shop capacity, stuff like that to be considered?
Yes. So we consider all the various operations, bend, weld, paint, cut, all your different operations, and you can even configure how many specific physical machines, how many press brakes you have, how many painting booths you have. You can set calendars for all of your different operations and workstations. We take all that into account.
Okay, this is a good one from Magdalena. Says, quote like this is okay when customers send DXF files with all information. I am pricing every day, and unfortunately, all DXF has just view parts and no other information. So then I won't be able to price fast. So I think she's trying to figure out how is she supposed to get like other details of just like a DXF file, just the shape, maybe into the system.
So a couple different options. So one option is if the DXF has the geometry, you can at least import that geometry. And then when that geometry comes in, we have steps. I didn't show them here in the video, but we do have the capability of once we take that geometry, create a part out of it, you can add in the information that you want, material, thickness, what have you. If you're not getting that information inside the files from your customers, You're just going to have to enter it. There's not really a whole lot of way around that, no matter what software you use. Another option that we have is we have a specific workflow that we created for our customers that even don't get files in the beginning. We have a way to create what we call placeholder items in the job, and you can even do an import with Excel to create a bunch of placeholder items. They're basically dummy items so that you can quote very quickly, even if you don't have the files. And then if you win the job, then you're able to then go in and get the files from your customers, create those parts in the system, and quickly replace or swap out the dummy items in your job with those real parts. So we have a few different options for you.
Okay, getting close to the end here. Does SigmaSchedule work if you only have SigmaNEST?
So SigmaSchedule works along with SigmaQUOTE or SigmaMRP. So basically, SigmaSchedule schedules what we call the job. So our jobs is what we showed here. It's just the container that contains all the different parts, all the different operations, due dates, things like that about what you need to produce for an order. We then take that container, that job, and then we quote it, or then we can schedule it. So you either have to have SigmaQUOTE to create that job container, or SigmaMRP, either one.
All right, cool. Neil Wilson asks, can SigmaQUOTE automatically extract the part from the DXF and remove the drawing frame, dimensions, etc.?
Yep. So all of that is actually base implemented SigmaNEST importing functionality. So SigmaNEST's importing functionality can look at the part, it can look at the DXF, depending on how you have the DXF drawn or how you have the system configured, and it can strip away all the different features and information in it, like the header block. It could even take out things like bend lines and all that kind of stuff, depending on how you have that set up in SigmaNEST and the DXF configured.
All right. I think that's the end of the questions, but we do have 2 votes from our teams out there that wants to see a SigmaSchedule webinar. And Ted, our marketing manager, has posted one of your webinars that you did last year on SigmaSchedule.
Absolutely. We spent some time putting together a good demo for you guys so that you guys can see some of that functionality for SigmaSchedule. So if Ted's posted that, you guys please watch and then reach out to us if you have questions.
Right. Well, thank you, Wayne. That was a very good webinar, very informative, lots of powerful tools. We'd like to share them with our customers. We do have an attendance list here with this webinar, so we'll be able to give that list out to our local sales managers, and they'll be in touch with each of you. I know that there's a lot of customization and a lot of specific needs when it comes to quoting, scheduling, and a lot of other products that we would like to expand that conversation, with a one-on-one discussion. So we'll have our sales managers reach out to each one of you and schedule maybe more time with Wayne or one of his people that work for him to come up with a customized solution. All right, though. I think that's the end of the questions. Let me think one more time. Look one more time. There is one last one here. Does it account for, this is from Richie. Does it account for travel time for the X, Y, and Z axis? Take, for example, cutting a large perforated plate. Travel time is just as much as cutting the holes. An 8-hour program can be 16 hours with travel time.
Absolutely. Again, and that's a very good point. And that's another one of those things where your third-party solution, because it's not necessarily going to understand how that machine is going to be driven to cut those holes, if you cut them in a certain pattern or if you do certain different things with it, it's not going to understand how you're doing that driving the machine, because that's just not what they do. But because we use all the setting and all the information available inside SigmaNEST, including the travel time, head up time, head down time, all of that information is accounted for in the quote.
Awesome. I've never seen this many questions, Wayne. You've definitely touched on a very interesting topic for our customers here. This one last one just came in. Will this work well with parts with threaded holes, counterbore, countersinks, and pockets with depth?
Absolutely. If you've got like the drilling module or the punch module inside SigmaNEST, we can account for the time that it takes to do those hits, and we can account for those kinds of things as well.
All right. Well, Wayne, thanks again. I do appreciate you and your time. Ted, also from marketing. And there was a note up there. If you wanted to reach out to us and contact us, just go to our sales line, request a demo. That's one of the quickest way that you'll get attention from us, and we'll be in touch. So having said that, again, thanks, Wayne. I appreciate you. And thanks to all our participants that joined us today. We do appreciate your attendance.